Welcome YouTubers, fellow tankers, even my clanmates, and you have arrived at King's Court Reviews. I am Shrine King, and today we're going to be going over the Tier 8 Swedish Heavy, the Emil 1. So this tank, or for those that are new, this is basically like a pros and cons, any notation of basically the tier below, tier above for the tank line. Is the line worth it? And then I also get into like a guide of like how to play the tank for performance wise. So right out the door, getting into pros, it is an autoloader, so it's a heavy autoloader, and that means it has really high damage potential. It's also relatively fast. Now, this is the video that you're seeing right now. That is actually the very first match I have in it. So that's some of the notations that I'll have is also to note what it's like when you first start playing this tank. So the yeah, I would say like that's pretty much the gist of a lot of the pros to the tank. It is, well, actually, I take that back. There is one other big bit. It's the depression of it. So it is able to aim down hills quite well. Now, when it comes to cons, though, it doesn't really hold up in armor. Now, if it's on a hill and it's using its depression, the turret is practically impossible to penetrate because of deflection rules. But if you get it on the open ground or anything like that, actually, it's pretty easy to pen it. That said, also too, is like the aim time and things like that are a little bit rough on the gun, more specifically so on starting out. So just to bear in mind, I have actually not gotten through the whole line yet to where I've unlocked everything. So this is kind of an early on review, and then I will do another video as well when I get to the rest of the stuff for the tank. So yeah, other than that, for cons, I don't think there's really anything else to really point out besides the fact that, like, you know, the aim time and the reload is a little bit long. But the whole, actually, no, I'm sorry, I take that back. Especially with the gun itself, the penetration's actually pretty low. Now you're looking at 320 alpha damage on the shot itself, but I think the initial one, you're only looking at like 170 as your initial pen, which puts it as like the IS-6 equivalent, which was noted to be a weak gun even for tier 8, and that's what you're at. You're at tier 8. So having 170 pen is pretty low. When you get the next gun, it actually jumps up, I think up to like 190 or something like that. So that actually puts you more on par at the tier, but that also means higher tiers are going to be a little bit rough. One thing I would note as well is that you'll see there I have APCR as the premium. That is a nice function because, or a nice thing to have, simply because travel velocity of the shell will be higher and that faster, I should say, and that means that you can actually snipe targets from a distance. So here you'll see is my first fight. The key things that I know is that starting out, one, I don't have a really powerful gun, so me trying to get up and to fight people face to face is probably a bad choice. So starting out, I would actually play this tank more supportive and kind of like a potential flanker, you know, or even like tank destroyer kind of aspect. And you'll see there that I actually flipped around. The goal there, and here I know for a fact, like the E100, like I said, the gun's overall penetration is so low, I'm not going to pen him. So the best I can do is track him and then try to do what I can to support. So that's one of the guide parts that I'm going to get into. So bear in mind, I just kind of cover the pros and cons of the tank. I'll cover a little bit of like the tiers before and after, but I want to kind of cover as a guide more so on this part because it's like the first fight. So here what I would recommend, especially starting out with this tank, is be more of a supportive player. Stay farther back, kind of do what you can, use the damage potential of your gun on targets that it will work on, and then on targets that it won't, use it as a supportive measure. So try to track the targets, keep them in place, keep them locked down. The other thing that you'll notice that I did is I did put binocs on this tank. and that's to help keep it where I can try to get eyes on targets for people. So you'll notice, like, even though I'm not doing damage, I'm again bottom tier, by the way. So like going against like these tanks and trying to fight against them is pretty, like, it's pretty insane. I wouldn't be able to do it myself. So here you'll see I'm just gonna keep trying to track this guy. And then I have the binocs to help me keep things lit, so that way I can still support my team in a sense of keeping visual on the target. And then I'm just going to rack in, not from damage myself, but more or less use the damage potential of my friendlies. So like I've already racked in over 1,000, right? So that's kind of the gist too. The other bit too is you are pretty mobile heavy. You do have good speeds, even starting out. So that means you can also be the kind of case where it's like, well, I'm not going to be able to, you know, do much more on this side. Let me go ahead and swap to the other side. Or, hey, the other side's suffering so bad that they need support. That means you can actually go ahead and start maneuvering into that direction, and you should be able to get there in a good amount of time. So you see here, I'm not firing. I could, but I'm not going to. I'm going to wait. And then I was waiting for him to repair it, so that way I can go ahead and try to retrack him. That said, a better play would have been probably to kind of time it in my head a little bit and then fire a little early, just to try to make sure that if I didn't get the, like, for example, like the part where he blocked it, if that happened, then I would have the opportunity to try and stop or put another round into it to hopefully track him on the second shot. So then you'll just see here, like, I am able to get up to speed. I'm able to maneuver. Now against a Pershing, Pershings don't really have a lot of armor, so I knew that, hey, that should be pretty easy. But even that, like, I was like, even with that, like, trying to shoot down into his turret, I still could not pen him with this gun. Which was like, ugh, what a nightmare, right? So, and that was with a premium round, by the way. So I was running the highest pen I can possibly have in the initial gun, and that's how it performs. So bear that in mind. That's kind of the gist of what I would do starting out with this tank. As you get the better gun and the engine and the tracks and all that kind of stuff, that's where I would say you can run frontline. Basically, you can kind of get up into a hill position, use the depression, fight people face to face. Because then your gun is just you're gonna be able to plow through them, most likely for the tier, maybe even a tier above. In the event that it's a tier 10 though, I would not recommend doing any of that. And that said too, like, even afterwards, I would still kind of recommend playing this tank more of a supportive style tank. Its damage potential is really nice. So not keeping the gun on the field, right, and overexposing yourself, or, you know, just getting into a situation where you're trying to frontline against tanks that are better at frontlining than you are, it's not an ideal scenario. It's not what I would recommend. So, rolling back, let's talk about the tier before and the next tier, and the information that I know for that, because currently this is the highest that I've gotten on the tier, but I have looked into a lot of information about the next tier. So let's start with the tier below. The tier below, at tier 7, you are running the Leo. Now the Leo is very mobile, very accurate, as long as you don't swap to the end gun. The end gun has got like 300 alpha damage, has less penetration, less accuracy, and a very slow reload time. So if you are running the Leo, I will tell you right now, I do not recommend using the big gun. Strangely enough, I actually recommend using the second gun, I think is what it is. It's the middle gun. And I would actually run premium the whole time. If you're one of those people that you just, you don't really run premium tanks or don't have any premium tanks, then I don't recommend that. Just do what you can, play the tank as you can. But for those that do, I highly recommend that you run like 1 or 2 premium matches just to make up the silver that you're going to need. And then, in honest truth, I ran nothing but premium in the Leo. And more often than not, I actually still pulled in money. And it's not because, oh, hey, I got super premium accounts or something. It's simply because the overall damage potential and the overall performance boost that you get in the tank for doing that is so high that you will actually still pull in money doing it. And the reason I do that is because the reason I did that was because the penetration rate on the normal round was really low, but on the premium round was really high. And then you're now you're able to snipe better because it's APCR. It has better normalization, which means you will most likely pen even at harsher angles. But there are still those harsh angles that are impossible to pen because they are immediate deflection no matter what. So that's kind of the gist with the Leo. So the Leo is definitely a very enjoyable tank. It's definitely a guerrilla warfare, hill fighter. You know, keep yourself a little exposed at all times. Kind of pop up and shoot somebody and pop back down because that's just the style of the tanks, and I found it very enjoyable. Then the tier above this, the Emil 2, is basically the Emil 1 just enhanced in every way. You get more rounds, if I'm right, to the clip. And again, I'm kind of running off memory now. So you get more rounds to the clip. The alpha damage goes up. The penetration goes up. And not just slightly up, significantly up. So now you're at a point where, hey, it's really good. The other bit is you have really good armor in this one. So like, for example, part I didn't mention is advisory. Your side armor in the Emil 1 is so low, most tanks will actually overmatch you. And I think they're working on maybe changing that. They might actually increase that armor. So that's something to note on timeline here for the video taken. So eventually they've been talking, like Wargaming's been talking about changing that, and that would make it to where people won't just like plow their rounds right through you no matter what. But in the Emil 2 that does not occur. The other bit too is the Emil 2 actually gets better armor, which makes it a little better in the sense that if they are caught out in the open, it's not necessarily super easy sauce to pen them. So that part is definitely really good. And then as whether the line is worth it, honestly, as high damage output tank, it is because you're looking at, you'll have really good damage output because you have the autoloader side of this with really high penetration and decent accuracy and stuff like that, especially for an autoloader. The other comparison, right, is the T57 Heavy. Now the T57 Heavy has interesting armor that allows it to be able to do well in situations that you kind of wouldn't really expect. But the truth is, the Carnivoran is going to do better than the T57 Heavy any time of day. And I do mean any time of day on a hill. Period. Because you just cannot pen through its turret when it's on the hill. The T57 Heavy is similar in the sense that it is complicated to deal with on the hill. But if people know that tank, they know how it works. There is parts on the cheeks that are literally like they're rubber. So you actually overmatch through them because there is no real armor there. In that case, then yes, that makes it to where the Carnivoran is going to do better than the T57 Heavy. Now, if you're comparing against like the AMX 50B, I do believe still the AMX 50B is the best when it comes to damage output. But this kind of goes into like whether it's damage output or being able to block kind of stuff, right? And I do feel the Carnivoran is going to be the best bet for that side. Now, does it fall into meta when you're doing clan wars and stuff like that? Not really. So you don't really see it very often because the meta is more about, for heavies, right? It's more about having the solid armor. People still like running the T57 simply because of how fast the reload is on the T57. And that's true, right? So like the T57 does have a significantly fast reload for an autoloader. So here's a case where you can see, like, you know, the accuracy is not horrible for their guns, but like, and again, the penetration is just really low. So continuing on with the guide. So this is like hill fights, right? So I'm making sure to not try rushing up. I'm trying to stay back a little bit. And that allows me to use the angle of the hill to my benefit, so that way people cannot pen me. Because of the turret, right? Because that's where the turret holds strong. So you'll see that other guy, he actually exposed his hull, and as soon as he exposed his hull, That was done deal. Everyone can pen him. And again, like I said, that side doesn't matter where anyone touched it, right? They will immediately pen him simply because of overmatching mechanics. So here you'll see I'm just using proper angling and keeping it to where I'm trying not to expose much of my tank, right? Keeping that depression angle down, so that way all they're going to get is my turret, and they're not going to be able to actually pen me because of how the mechanics work on armor angling and deflection. Now, here I'm making a bad play, but it's because I have to. I don't have a choice. My team is about to lose because even though we are winning, no one really went to make sure we hold the flag or keep the flag from having this scenario, right, where they're about to just cap it out. So I'm now rushing to try to do a reset just to try to buy my team some time, and this is so that we hopefully can win, which actually I think in truth I do save the day, and I think we do win, but I'm pretty certain it's going to cost me, right? So like I can't hold the enemy like this. I'm not a tank that can hold it from this, because one thing to bear in mind too, I should mention, Emil cannot fight tanks from multiple angles, right? So if you have one to the left of you, one to the right of you, you're already in a bad spot. You only want your targets to be ever front facing to you, right? So always have your turret front facing to the opponent, and do not allow any other opponents from any other angle to get a shot on you, because what will happen is they can pen you from any other angle on the turret, and that's bad. So hopefully this helps you guys. Hopefully you enjoy these videos. Please let me know your thoughts. And again, I will make another video in further details when I have everything unlocked for the tank. So again, if you like this stuff, like, subscribe. I do this every week, and I will catch you on my next video.